Knowles on the News. Susan Knowles.
Well, once again, Donald Trump has gotten himself positioned right where he wants to be. And once again, everybody is playing right into it. You know, if you don't like him, you have to agree that he is a man that knows how to get attention. He knows how to get the public talking about him. And he knows how to get, I would say, the majority of the attention in the news focused right on him. Not a bad thing. I mean, if you're in a business or you want to win, that's the strategy that wins. And so far, it's a winning strategy. Now, some people may not like that, and they wish he'd go away, but it still is a winning strategy. This time, Donald Trump has said, I'm not going to participate in the debate on January 28th because I was treated unfairly by Megyn Kelly, and I'm not going to do it again. And here are my thoughts on this. Now, I know some people have said Megyn Kelly wasn't unfair with him in that first debate. He's just a whiner. He needs to get it together. I mean, how's he going to... And even they tweeted back something on the order, and when I say they, I mean Fox News. You know, how is he going to talk to Putin, something of that order, if he's afraid of Megyn Kelly? And as I said, it kind of goes back and forth about how you feel about that. Was he unfairly treated or not? A lot of people say, no, absolutely not. It was fair questions. Well, I remember it was the very first question, and it was about something that he had said. I have no problems with that. But here's the thing. I was watching that debate, and I felt that every single question that was given to Donald Trump by Megyn Kelly was about a personal thing rather than how are you going to lead as president of the United States? What are you going to do about globally, or what are you going to do nationally, or what are you going to do in regards to national security, whatever the case may be. But it was, you called women X, Y, and Z. You did this X, Y, and Z. Again, I don't think that he should be talking like that. I don't like the derogatory terms, the demeaning terms that he fields at people when he doesn't like it. It sounds like a childish little boy to me. It really does. I'm just being honest. It really does. It's something that I've spoken about over and over. He needs to stop. But in this case, when I was watching it, at least from my perspective, I didn't hear personal questions fielded to, let's say, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, or any of the other people. I didn't hear anybody saying, okay, Marco, now you have stood with the Gang of Eight, and obviously you're for amnesty. Why should we vote for you? I didn't hear that. Maybe I forgot about it, but I didn't hear that. Or Ted Cruz, you are, we think, born in Canada and maybe Canadian rather than American, and therefore you're not qualified. Whatever the case may be, those questions were not fielded to the other candidates as they were to Donald Trump. And again, I may be totally alone in that, but that's what I believe. So if we had started out everybody on equal footing and everybody asked particular questions that were the same across the board, I would have no problems with it. But I think in this case, they really do need to replace Megyn Kelly. It's become this little tit-for-tat conversation. I'm not going to give up. You can't bully me, Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump, we need to get rid of Megyn Kelly because she's no good. On and on and on. It's become about it's the circus that's been created that it's about. It's not about the American people. It's not about our best interests. If it were about serving the American people and getting down to exactly what it is that each candidate is about, then we could find another moderator. Sean Hannity could moderate. Anybody else could moderate. Anybody. But we don't want to do that. We're playing a game. And now Trump doesn't want to talk to anybody unless it's Rupert Murdoch. Get another moderator. It's simple. Just do it and let's move on. But instead, no, we're going to make this big deal about it. And who knows if in the end Donald Trump is going to show up and say, here I am. I've decided to come here and show you that I can do it, even though that Meghan is unfair. We'll let you be the judge. Don't know if that's going to happen, because now he's saying that he's going to have a concert and raise money for wounded warriors and give the money to the wounded warriors, which I think he should do anyway, whether or not he shows up. Let's give money to the veterans that really deserve to have the money, or the military, active military who've been wounded. Let's do that. It would be a better use of our money, a better use of our time. I don't know about you, but these debates are really, gosh, I'm not getting anything out of them except the same old thing. I already know about Marco Rubio's Gang of Eight. I already know that Marco Rubio says half-truths and hopes that nobody will call him on it. I mean, you only have to go and look up some of the things that he's talked about to realize that's what he does. Whether you're for him or not, you have to be, realistic about what he does. Just like with every other candidate, we have to be realistic. Nobody's perfect, but you have to pick through what they're doing. You can't just shut down and say, I'm for this candidate. I don't want to hear anything else. You should want to hear everything. This is your country. It should matter, and we should try to get it right. Whether you support Trump or Cruz or whoever else it is, you should want to find out all the facts and then just base your decision upon that. It really is that simple. But we can't do that if we just keep having these silly little debates and get no information. I don't know if I'm going to watch or not. I really don't know, because, again, I'm not getting anything new. Now, maybe if Trump isn't there, maybe the questions will turn to serious questions about our country and what each candidate is going to do. I sure hope so. I want to hear everything. I already know it's not Jeb Bush or John Kasich. Okay, forget they're even there. I don't need to hear anything from them. I've done my research on them. I've looked at it. They're taking up space. Okay, honestly, they're just taking up space. Let's get the top 4 people in there, and let's forget everybody else at this point. I know that's hard to hear, and I know that's some people aren't going to like that, but we need to start narrowing this down. We can't keep going on this way. The Democrats have already narrowed it down to 2 stellar candidates. And with Michael Bloomberg deciding, gosh, do I want to come in there and put more progressive thoughts into the debate? I mean, after all, we have a socialist, and I don't know how you would really describe Hillary, but then you could get Bloomberg, who is so far left. Wow. Ugh. I don't know how the people on the left are going to decide. Maybe they'll just flip a coin or just go with the person that is the same gender as they are. I mean, I think sometimes that's what the Democrats do. They so desperately want a woman, they'll take whatever they can get and not even worry about whether or not that she may be in prison. And let's just talk about that for a minute. Do you really think that Hillary Clinton is going to end up in prison? I don't. If you look back over the history of the Clintons, there have been so many times that the Clintons have come up against scandal after scandal after scandal, and every single time they end up better off than when they went in, really. It's amazing to sit there and watch. But you have to realize a couple of things if you don't already know, and I'm sure you probably already know, but for those people who may not know, when you're an attorney, and I was a practicing attorney, I have to admit that right up front, but when you're an attorney, every single word has importance to it. And you have to, you may want to remember when Bill Clinton said, I did not have sex with that woman. Well, in his mind, the word sex meant male-female intercourse. Okay? And it didn't mean anything else. You don't have to go outside of that. In his mind, that's where he was going. And so he could validly say, nope, I didn't have sex with her. in his mind. And the legal definition, while it was something else, he could honestly say, I did not have sex with that woman. And Hillary's doing the same thing. Because with these emails and the more than top secret emails that staffers may have cut and pasted and given to her, she's saying, I never received or sent emails that were marked classified. There again, you have to listen to every word that's spoken. Marked classified. Now, what they're accusing, and these are the people that are going after her, that quote unquote are going after her, what they're accusing is that there were letters, faxes that came across, whatever the case may be, that were clearly marked top secret, classified, do not, show anyone, whatever the case may be. Bold letters, you can't miss it. It just wouldn't happen. And what they're saying is now that the staffers or someone cut off the parts that said top secret. So what you have left is a, paragraph, 2 paragraphs, whatever it may be, and nothing marking it as top secret or classified or anything else for that matter. And that perhaps they took that, they pasted it onto another piece of paper and faxed it over to her. So clearly when she gets it, it's not marked classified. It's not marked at all. So in her mind, she can say, no, even under penalty of perjury, nope, sure not. I didn't receive anything marked classified. And again, it may not fit the legal definition, but in the mind of a Clinton, she can, with clear conscience, even with a lie detector, probably pass that, saying, yep, I never received anything marked classified. Now, clearly, when you look at something as a Secretary of State, you know darn well what you're looking at is either secret or classified or whatever the case may be. You know that the general public is not going to be allowed to look at that type of information. And the courts, if we had a Department of Justice who would prosecute in the first place, if it got to the courts, they would look at it and they would say, come on. But who knows what's going to happen? You have a DOJ who most likely is not going to do anything. And let's say the DOJ does go ahead and she gets convicted. You have an outgoing president. Is he going to pardon her if that be the case? I mean, the Clintons, when you may recall when Bill was president, and they had the Whitewater scandal. I believe it was again, there's been so many, could have been anything, but I believe it was the Whitewater scandal. And there was one woman, her first name was Susan, is all I remember, that would not testify against the Clintons and in fact went to jail because of it. And what happened before Clinton left office, I believe if I have my facts straight, he pardoned her. Isn't that what happens with these people, the elites? That's just what they do. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Now, I don't know if Obama loves Hillary as much as Hillary claims now to love Obama and everything that he's done. He's been so great. But it would not surprise me. And again, I don't think the DOJ is really going to go after her. I really don't. It's not worth anybody's time because they want to see her be president. But I know that Obama's been meeting secretly with Bernie Sanders. Now, I don't know what that's all about. I don't know if Obama's going to, throw his hat to Bernie Sanders and forget Hillary because things are getting so thick. Maybe the DOJ is just saying, hey, Obama, there's nothing we can do here. I mean, this is pretty bad. So I'm going to have to go ahead and do something. It's quite possible. You never know. You never know what goes on in the inner workings of the Obama administration. But if he's meeting with Bernie, he's meeting for a darn good reason. Maybe it's, Bernie, you need to drop out so Hillary can win, or Bernie, you need to stop talking so Hillary can win. Whatever the case may be, I don't know, and only time will tell. But when Obama's taking time out of his busy golf schedule to go meet with Bernie Sanders, you know it's pretty important, and it's going to mean something for either Obama or the Democratic Party. Maybe he's going to say, you need to step aside and let Mike Bloomberg in. I have no idea. But whoever it is, whoever gets Obama's blessings, his supporters are going to go right over and just vote for whomever Obama says to vote for. As bad as he's been, people will still do and follow whatever he says to do. And again, I think this is the guy you're looking at who's going to, maybe a year, maybe less, maybe a little bit more, he's going to go to the UN and he's going to want to be the leader of the UN. And you're going to see his face plastered all over everything. And I think one of the reasons that he's gotten America so entrenched with the UN and always calling on the UN for this and going to the climate change summits and blah, 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 I really do think that it's because when he gets in the UN, he wants to have America already set up so he can kind of continue to transform America, even if he's not president. Nothing surprises me about this man. Turning to other news now. You may or may not have heard that the Oregon standoff really took a horrible turn the other day. One person died and 8 others were taken into custody Tuesday. Authorities confronted an armed protest group responsible for a nearly month-long occupation of the National Wildlife Refuge in Bern, Oregon. And they really point out that they were armed militia. It's kind of sad because the man that got killed, Lavoy was his first name, Vinicum, I believe was his last name, 56 as I understand it. And what's being said is that he was, and again, you hear different accounts. I don't think we're ever going to know the truth, but that he was shot several times. They pulled him out of the car, insinuating that he was causing no harm. Now, who knows if that's true or not? That's just kind of rumors that are being spread around right now. And with this situation, the public is not going to know anything. Really, you're not. You're going to always hear a one-sided type argument, I believe. And from what I understand, the man who got killed, that he has a number of kids that were adopted and he was responsible for. From what I understand, he had 11 children total. Then you might also ask, well, why was he out there doing that if he had that many children and he knew that he had to be responsible for them and take care of them? Maybe that wasn't the responsible thing for him to do. And who knows, hindsight is 20/20. And you have to understand that when somebody does go out and do something like that, they genuinely think that they're doing the right thing. And, so our prayers and our thoughts go out to his family, who are now going to be probably financially not well off at all without him being there, but who knows? But it's a bad thing that it had to all come down to that. I know a lot of people have said that they're not sure that any of this was really worth it, that this was the wrong thing to do and the wrong way to go about it in Bern, Oregon. And this wasn't the place or the time or the issue to take a stand on. And I know that Ammon Bundy, one of the co-leader, as they call him, he was arrested. And another suspect, John Eric Ritzheimer, they said, was arrested in Peoria, Arizona. And they're saying in some reports that he turned himself in. They say he's an anti-government activist who has organized armed anti-Muslim rallies in Phoenix. And also we're being told that Bundy's brother was wounded, but slightly wounded, and should be okay. But I don't know where people go from here. I mean, these people who are arrested are looking at facing felonies. And it's not easy to overcome that. And it's kind of, again, I know these people probably felt that they were doing the noble and right thing, but long term, when it doesn't work out, they're no longer able to participate in what might be coming down the pike that is the right thing to participate in or to stand up and protest against. They'll be in prison, perhaps. They're not Clinton, so they may end up in prison. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, I don't think we're going to hear very much about this. I think that they're just glad in Oregon and the feds are just glad that they are getting this out of the news. They want to move on. And I had understood that the governor of Oregon actually said to the feds, hey, let's just get these people out of here. We want to move on. They'd been there since January the 2nd. And I'm kind of surprised that nothing happened before now, to tell you the truth. I know they wanted to sort of have a peaceful resolution according to what the feds had said, but obviously a peaceful resolution didn't turn out to be the case. Very sad. Again, our prayers go out to the families of the man who lost his life. And moving on, in other news, and I just found this article to be so incredibly bold, and I'll tell you why. Senator Lisa Murkowski, and she's Republican, she noticed something was a little off the other day when she was on the Senate floor. Now, perhaps people should notice more often that there's something off on the Senate floor. There's been something off on the Senate floor, I don't know, for at least 7 years. But this particular day, this was after the snow, when the snowstorm shut down everything. Well, apparently, Lisa, we'll just call her Lisa. It's so much easier than saying their whole name or her title. Hopefully she'll forgive me for that. But anyway, when she was back at work, she looked around the Senate floor, and what was so odd was that only women were at work. That's right, guys. You are not as good as women. So now I guess there's a war on men, too, because you weren't there. You were still at home, still sleeping, wherever you were. But the women were there to do business in the Senate because the little men were at home. Now, let me just tell you something. If this article, and it's in CNN, if this article had come out and the reverse were true, where a senator, a male senator, went and said, hey, I looked around the Senate floor and guess what? There were only men there, no women. Oh my gosh. You would not hear the end of it. But apparently it's okay to put down men when they're not there. Now, I'm all for it. Let's give the facts. If there are no men there, let's say there's no men there. If there are no women there, let's say there are no women there. But in our politically correct world, we're not able to sometimes say the truth, even when it's the truth. But CNN felt bold enough. Now, CNN would never run this story if it were the other way around. There's no way. No, they would say, oh gosh, no, that would be putting women down. We can't do that. I mean, it would be a great story for war on women, but that's the only way we're going to run that one. I thought it was funny that this would even be said. I'm glad she said it. I mean, if it's the truth, it's the truth. But again, it really does seemingly put men down. What if the men hadn't come into the Senate floor yet? I mean, it's a possibility, but we'll never know that, will we? You men really ought to be outraged, and you should just put everything down and go complain, because it's so important to do that. It's not like there's so much going on in the rest of the world that's important. You should really focus on this. Just another ridiculous story, but one I think that makes a really good point, and that is the world is not equal when it comes to how they deal with things. And political correctness, again, has caused too many problems. And it's past time, that we start looking at things like that and changing them and speaking out against them and bringing up the facts. People may not like the facts, but the facts are the facts. And let's start practicing that. You may not be liked very well by people. They may not appreciate what you say. But if you have facts, you can back them up. Say it. Say it. And if they have a picture of, all women on the Senate floor and they can back it up and have a couple people say, yeah, they're only women on the floor. Okay. Because when the important issues do come up, we want to be able to use the facts then and say the facts and not have political correctness keep us from doing it. I mean, that's my point for bringing up this ridiculous story is just that. We've got to get back to the point where we don't allow political correctness to stop us from saying anything, no matter what the case may be, and no matter who does or doesn't like it. Speak the truth, period. And boys, next time, get to work. Moving right along. We have another article that's out. It's on Time and Time.com. And basically, I just love this. Whenever you have the United States government involved in something where they start out with a panel of experts, you know you're in trouble. And you know that you really need to look at exactly what these panel of experts are doing and who these panel of experts really and truly are. And a lot of times they'll tell you experts, and they won't say who they are. Sometimes if you're talking, let's say, medical issues, you can say our experts, and you find out later on by doing some research that the experts are actually have their degrees in economics or math or something of that order and have never even looked at medical issues before. Well, they may be expert in their own field of study. That doesn't necessarily mean that it transfers over to another field of study. And I think you should always be a little skeptical about that. And when you see a report that just says experts, you need to really delve into it and find out who those quote-unquote experts really are. Now, in this article, it's all about depression. A panel of experts recommends all adults be screened for the disorder. See, that right there causes me concern. Why should every adult be screened for depression? If you don't have symptoms of depression, why are you being screened? What are we doing with this information? Because you got to know there's going to be a data bank. There always is. And it's going to be in your medical records. And we know now that with Obamacare, IRS is able to access. I mean, just who isn't able to access your information now? The government can see everything you do. They can decide whether or not you can have a gun based upon X, Y, and Z and what you've said to your doctor. So now we want to have a test where you can be looked at and we can decide whether or not you have depression. And if you have depression, does that in any way tamper with, infringe upon your Second Amendment rights? Are you so depressed that you might hurt yourself or others? Now, if you are that depressed, I don't think you need a study to determine that. You'll just know. Your doctor's going to know it when they see you. If you're going to a therapist, they're going to recommend probably that you see a psychiatrist and get on meds if it's that serious. But I don't think we need to have a study for every single American to determine whether or not you're depressed. That tells me, every warning bell goes off for me when I see that. And especially when the United States government is involved in that study and are part of the experts. You know that information is going to be used against you in some way. And I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory or whatever, but the real possibilities are here, and the fact that this president is so crazy about getting rid of guns and hammering home gun control until the day he leaves office, which can't be soon enough, you've got to know that they're getting information put together. I mean, they'll just do anything to infringe on your rights to own a gun. And I love how this article starts out. Here's the hook. This is what's going to draw you in. Depression is a common disorder, meaning, gosh, do you really even know that you don't have depression? Because it's so common. Probably everyone has it, and maybe you just don't know, and we can help you out. Now, it doesn't read that in there, of course, that was my ad-libbing, but it does say, depression is a common disorder among Americans and a leading cause of disability. Okay, so why would they be interested in disability? Well, we got to know how much this is going to cost under Obamacare. The economic burden of the disease is also immense. An estimated $23 billion of productivity was lost in 2011 to 2012, according to a past Gallup estimate. Finding people with a disorder can be an important step. Yeah. And on Tuesday, a government group reported that all adults should be screened for depression, including women who are pregnant and those with postpartum depression. It's the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force. Oh, doesn't that just, I don't know, for me, that just screams Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. You know, a task force. Someone, a group who has been assigned to help you. We only want to help you, okay? It isn't anything about us, the government. It's all about you. It's a group of experts that review the latest science behind health advice. And they've released a new recommendation that all adults should be screened for depression. And it says that the update comes from a 2009 recommendation from the group, which reached similar conclusions, but did not look at pregnant or postpartum women. Wonder why they added that on. Is it because there are more cases of postpartum? Is it because it's more lucrative, costing the government more money? What's the point? And the way they want to do this with your primary care is give you a questionnaire and have you fill out this questionnaire. And the new guidance suggests that all adults age 18 and older be regularly screened for depression, including, again, pregnant, postpartum women, as well as the elderly. And I love this. Again, my little alarm bells go off. Systems should also be in place to ensure accurate diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up. How frequently people should be screened isn't yet fully understood. We're gonna go back to the drawing board and see what else we need to do. It says, when it comes to treatments, the researchers say the harm of depression screening is small to none. Of course not. It's only going to take a few minutes of your time. There's going to be no harm whatsoever. All of your information is going to go into our database. It's going to be, all the doctors are going to have access to it. Don't worry about the government. Yes, we'll have access, but shh. And I promise we'll never, ever use that against you. Pinky swear. And again, they said, when it comes to treatments, the researchers say the harm of depression screening is small to none, and that treatment with cognitive behavior therapy is safe. Okay, that says nothing about medication there. And if that's true, if cognitive behavior therapy is safe, why do you need to get involved at all? What's your point? Because it only really impacts you significantly when you're looking at cost, Mr. and Ms. Government, right? So why do you care if other people are depressed and they're able to go out and get treatment and everything's okay? What's the problem? Well, here's the problem. as a practicing licensed therapist, when you have somebody that comes in and they say to you that they're depressed, if you don't do anything, let's say you say, okay, we're going to do cognitive behavioral therapy and we'll see how this works. And they leave your office and they go kill somebody or they harm themselves because you didn't know how bad their depression was because they never told you accurately or honestly how bad it was, you're going to be on the hook for that. So it's advisable, at least from what we've been taught, to each and every time. I mean, to cover yourself, to cover all the bases. You say to them, we're going to do therapy. However, I would like to refer you to a psychiatrist so that you can also be evaluated for medication. Now, does that mean somebody comes in and says, I've been crying this week because, X, Y, and Z happened, and it's everybody else would cry too? No, I'm talking about people who come in and say, I've been depressed for a while now, and I'm very sad, and it sounds like it could go either way type thing. You'd better refer them to a psychiatrist. And what does a psychiatrist do? Well, not all psychiatrists, but really what they want to do is their function is to give you the proper medication so that you're no longer depressed or, whatever the case may be. And some people who've never even thought about taking medication, if you refer them to a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist who's a doctor, an MD, says you need medication, they may think, gosh, maybe I guess I do need medication. Now, that's not to say that you don't, but sometimes psychiatrists, that's their first line that they go to. They want to give you medication. It's like, it's when you go to your own doctor, and let's say you have, something that maybe could be treated with natural medicines or natural herbs, something that affect, and the doctor wants to give you a prescription. I mean, that happens to me. I'm not one who really likes to take medications. I'll do anything else naturally. I'll look at that first. I'll say, hey, instead of antibiotics, can I work this out myself? Because the doctors, too, they want to give you antibiotics right away. Here, take this. You'll feel better. Not looking at the long-term effects of doing that, but that's what they do. I'm not faulting them for it. That's their doctors, and some doctors are that way. Other doctors will work with you on different things. But a psychiatrist generally will give you medication. And so there you go. Some person comes in who may not need medication, even if a psychiatrist says that you do. You have a right to say, I don't agree with you, psychiatrist. And they start taking medication. And then the government can say, wow, boy, do we really have a problem here in depression? Because the increase in medications are just amazing. How many people we see now are on meds. Again, not looking at it as maybe they wouldn't have been on meds had you not given them the test and said, whoa, you may be a little depressed here. And I'm sure part of the screening is going to be, we want you to see your doctor, we want you to see your therapist, we want you to see your psychiatrist. And again, you're getting into the system at that point and perhaps getting on medications when you either A, don't need medications, or some other method would have worked better or just as well as medication. Now, they say also antidepressants are found to be linked to some concerning possible side effects like suicidal behaviors or gastrointestinal bleeding, but overall the risks were low. And that's what they concluded. Yeah. Every time you do a government study, it seems like the risks are pretty low when it comes to getting you on medication. And it concerns me too, because we have so many of our veterans coming back who've been diagnosed with PTSD, and it seems like, from the veterans that I've talked to, that the first thing that they want to do with them is put them on medication or multiple medications for depression. And a lot of those veterans that I've spoken with weren't given therapy along with the medications, which, in my opinion, is very dangerous to do. You've got to have somebody monitoring what's going on. And a psychiatrist sees you about once a month. Whereas with therapy, if you're really in need of medication and the psychiatrist has said you've got to have it, you are so depressed, or it's to that level where they feel that you need medication, then you should be talking to a therapist probably once a week or once every other week, because medication alone isn't really, again, in my opinion, the appropriate way to handle depression. And so, when the government is involved, it causes me great pause, and great concern about what they're doing and why, what is the motive behind it. I would really like to believe this is just altruistic and the government really wants to help you and it's for your best interest. I would love to believe that, but the way that I'm seeing things in this administration and have seen for the past 7 years, I just don't believe it. Somebody else may, and that's great. Hopefully you're right and I'm wrong. I just have concerns that if the government keeps meddling into the mental health profession, that a lot of people who need help are not going to get the help because they're not going to want to go to a doctor, to a therapist, to a psychiatrist, to talk to them about their issues because they're going to be afraid that that information is going to be used against them, whether it's their gun control issues or something else. And the government's getting too far into every single thing. And you're going to see, I believe, a lot more people turning to self-medication. And that's not a good thing. I really think in order for the medical and mental health professions to be viable, that information has to stay confidential between you and your provider and not the government. So in this next election and whoever gets in, I really think that's one thing that really needs to be looked at more closely. Get the government out of our medical and mental health fields as fast as we possibly can. It's not going to work well long term for the government to continue to stick its nose into the people's business, especially in these areas. Moving on, we have, another reason now to look at blacks and whites differently. I don't know if you know it, but seatbelts are now connected to racism. That's right. Seatbelts can be used against you if you are a racist. What do I mean by that? Well, in Florida, the ACLU now is claiming that a new report raises red flags over racial profiling. We're back to racial profiling, and we found another way to racially profile people. According to the article it's not an article, it's by the ACLU. So, right there, it's got to be right on, truthful, accurate, and totally unbiased. It says, black motorists in Florida are stopped and ticketed for seatbelt violations in far greater numbers than the white motorists. Nearly twice as often statewide and up to 4 times as often in certain counties. And the ACLU is calling on the Florida Attorney General's Office of Civil Rights to investigate. It went on to say the numbers are shocking. It continues on to say these racial disparities raise serious concerns that officers are engaging in racial profiling when enforcing the state's safety belt law. Now, if it's true, yeah, there's probably a little issue there we need to correct. But, wow. And they're saying, really, that the difference in numbers between black and whites that's not the reason. There's more whites than there are blacks, or there are more blacks than there are whites. No, that's not the reason. It's because they're racist. Well, okay, ACLJ, if that's true, are you looking at anything else? Are you looking at any other patterns with different ethnic groups or genders or something else that can show a bias of these police forces there in Florida, rather than just looking at one thing and making a generalization about it. I mean, I know everybody wants to see everything as being racist these days. Is it that, or is it an anti-cop type of mentality? I want to see more figures before we can just say, oh, there you go. This because of the seatbelts, this is it. When maybe there are reasons. Maybe it's very obvious that people aren't wearing their seatbelts and they stop them. Maybe they're stopped for something else, and they're also ticketed for seatbelts violations. I don't know. But to me, it's like, how can you make this determination and say it's so fact-based and so obvious, and here it is on sort of one thing. But they're claiming black motorists were stopped and cited 4 times more often than white motorists by the Escambia County Sheriff's Office in 2011. 2011 was the last date that they have, the most recent year that the agency reported seatbelt citation data. 3 times more often than white motorists by the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office in 2014, and 2.8 times more often than white motorists by the Orange County Sheriff's Office in 2014. I don't know. I just think that they're grasping at straws here. But they're saying the report notes that the differences in seatbelt wearing behavior between black and white people, as documented by statewide and national studies, do not explain the racial disparities in seatbelt citation rates identified in this report. You know, if there is really an issue here, of course, I want it looked into. But based upon this only, something doesn't seem right to me. It seems very incomplete. But of course, that the ACLU is urging the Florida Attorney General's Office of Civil Rights and local commissions charged with oversight responsibility to investigate agencies whose implementation of the law has met or exceeded the already large statewide racial disparity. What do they base that on? They also want the Florida legislature to pass a measure penalizing law enforcement agencies that fail to comply with the state's reporting requirements. And again, it all sounds important, but I just don't know how valid it all is. And in addition, the report recommends that law enforcement collect and analyze data for all traffic and pedestrian stops, provide testing on implicit bias and training on bias-free policing to all officers, and retrain officers whose stop and citation practices result in large racial disparities. The people on the left, the progressives, always love to retrain and send people to bias training. I'm all for righting a wrong, if indeed there has been a wrong. But I don't trust the ACLU. Sorry, I don't. I think that you do have a particular bias, very left-wing leaning, and you're going to look for anything. I have a feeling that there are other things in that report that you haven't pointed out and that you're not willing to point out because it doesn't fit your agenda. I wish somebody else would do a report. If there's truly a problem in Florida, let's have a neutral company come in and look at the stats and see if they come up with the same thing. If they do, then we've got a problem. But with the ACLU, I'm not buying it. I really am not. So we'll try to watch and see if that goes any further in Florida, or if it's just another one of those things that the ACLU is bringing up to try to bring attention to itself. Well, believe it or not, it has been 30 years since the Challenger disaster. And I don't know if you remember, but the one teacher, Krista McAuliffe, had wanted to go into space and have like the first ever teaching assignment in social studies from outer space. And it was 1986. And I don't know about you, but there are events that happen in your life, and you can always remember where you were and what you were doing. And I can remember it so clearly. I was in law school, and I was watching TV, watching the whole event, watching the Challenger take off. Krista McCullough and 6 other astronauts were on the Space Shuttle Challenger. And I remember her parents being in the audience watching as the space shuttle lifted off. And it went up, looking really good, like it's going to do well. And all of a sudden, it just looked like it exploded. And everybody was hopeful. Oh, maybe that was just what it was supposed to do, and it's going to be okay. And, oh, my gosh, after a minute or two, you could just see that things clearly weren't okay. And her parents were, of course, devastated. I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine sitting there watching as, my daughter is killed right before my very eyes in a space shuttle. I can't even imagine that. And everybody was so stunned by that. And I think it was very poignant, especially because there was a teacher on board, someone who was not a professional astronaut, someone who knew the risks, obviously, but not the risks like somebody who is an astronaut and does it on a daily basis. But she knew what she was getting into, and she wanted to do it anyway. And she lost her life that day doing what she thought would be a great thing for kids. And people who knew her thought she was a great teacher. And obviously she was, that her first thoughts were to the children and having a lesson in outer space with them. And, what a great accomplishment that would have been. And unfortunately, I know that her own children suffered because they lost a mom that day and her husband lost a wife that day. But a great woman and a great example of someone who I feel was selfless and looking to do the right thing. And wanted to be a role model, a great role model for children. And I think that she really was, because she's now had people who were in her class who've now become teachers themselves because of her and of the fact that they loved her classes so well. And I guess she had a law class as well. And they did mock trials in class. And one of the kids at the time, who's now an adult, said that she remembered how personable she was and how she shared her enthusiasm and experiences when she was in the running to be the first teacher in space. What a great thing. What a wonderful thing to know that your life had merit. And of course she doesn't know that, but everybody who knew her husband, know that her life really did have meaning and merit, whether she ever got to know that or not. And hopefully she knew that as a teacher. And I would say that she did. I mean, being selected as the one to go, you'd have to know that there's something about what you're doing that is being recognized and that people like. And so on this anniversary, I think it's important for all of us to really remember that you never know what you do that's going to have a profound effect on someone, or what that you might say, or that if you're feeling that your life really, it's kind of mundane or dull, or why do I stand out, whatever the case may be, just knowing that there is value in what you do, and that you may not recognize it during your lifetime, or that the bigger things that you do may not be recognized until after your life is over, but that it's important for us to remember that we do have value in what we do, and that it's important to do our best, important to be our best. And I think Krista McCullough, I think she did do her best. I really, really do. And I think she's a great example of an American who went out to do the right thing, who trained and worked hard And I know in our world today when a lot of things are just handed over and we're not teaching necessarily our children about working hard, this is an example of working hard and trying to be the best that you can be. Doesn't always work out, but it doesn't mean that you should not always try your hardest. And I really do appreciate and do remember that day in 1986 as if it were yesterday when those 6 astronauts and that one very special teacher lost her life in the Challenger shuttle. And finally, in one of the silliest cases I think that I've ever heard, happened in Dallas, Texas. A Texas father, this is absurd, was accused of theft after he confiscated his 12-year-old daughter's cell phone over an inappropriate text, was charged with a misdemeanor. And what happened? Well, the mom said, hey, I own that cell phone, and she reported the confiscation as a theft. Now, dare we say that these people are most likely divorced, and this is the type of things, as a family law attorney, these are the things that I saw all the time and I hated, absolutely hated, where the mom and dad, they hate each other. I don't know if that's the way it is in this case or not, but in the cases I've seen, mom and dad just hate each other and they will do anything they can do to get back at each other. Meantime, you've got the kid in the middle who's the absolute pawn in all of it. And this girl is not learning anything about how to properly use a cell phone and what's inappropriate on a cell phone. I mean, she should be taught, especially if this is coming from, let's say, a little boy. And I don't know that this came from a boy. I have no idea what the message was or what kind of rudeness it was. But she should be taught how you don't allow people to treat you poorly. But instead, she's being taught, hey, if you don't like something, just go out and tell your mom, and she'll go get the police. And so anything that dad says in the future, I'm just going to go to mom if I don't like it, and she'll call the police, and dad will get a misdemeanor charge slapped on him. This girl is obviously, in my opinion, just reading this, is not learning anything about how to respect your father. And this is horrible that this girl is caught in the middle of her parents. I am happy to report that the misdemeanor charges were dropped. But this has gone on for 3 years. The girl is now 15. He had refused to pay his bail of $1,500. Good for you. And, 3 years later, can you imagine what this girl has learned about how to disrespect her father? Potentially disrespect her father in the 3 years that this court battle was going on. And that this man had to deal with this for 3 years because he took a cell phone away from his daughter under which appears to be appropriate circumstances for a parent to do. And the final little dig here that I love that the dad did was the dad kept the cell phone. Good for you. Come on. This has to be the most ridiculous case that I've seen in quite a long time. We need to be focused on important stuff. We really do. Parents, if you're getting a divorce, please don't put your kids in the middle. Just be kind to your ex-spouse. You may not like them, but just remember you're divorced now. And you can move on. But don't play your children and put them in a situation where they're not going to learn appropriate things and how to deal with life in general. I hope everyone has a great week. I know it's going to be one of those weeks with a lot of ups and downs, but let's keep it positive. Let's keep it real. And I wanted to let you know, I so appreciate that you're listening to Stand for Truth Radio and the segments I do, like this one called Knowles On the News. I would ask that if you will, that you would go to Spreaker.com and just log in and follow us there under Stand for Truth Radio. We love to get as many followers as we can. This way you can get the podcasts immediately when they're made available, and you won't miss an episode. I think it's so important that we continue to get the message out, and that's what I try to do each and every week. I would love to hear from you. If you want to write me, I will read your email and write you back at Susan at SusanKnowles.com, and Knowles is spelled Knowles. I really do like to hear from you. because it lets me know what you like and don't like, and maybe what you want to hear more of, and maybe some upcoming guests on Stand for Truth Radio that you would like for me to have on. So please feel free to contact me there, and let's just have a dialogue. You are very important. You're very important not only to this show, but to the direction of America. And I know that we all need to stand together in this effort. So please reach out to me. Let's talk, and let's make sure that we're all headed down the same path together. Because together we can make a difference. And I think it's important that we always remember that. So until next time, it's Susan Knowles with Knowles on the News.